Picture this. It's 3 in the morning, and you're lying awake staring at the ceiling. Your mind starts running through every possible financial disaster that could happen tomorrow. Your car could break down. Your laptop might suddenly stop working. Your rent is due next week. Or maybe your company announces layoffs. When you have little or no savings, every one of these possibilities feels like a ticking time bomb. Because one unexpected expense could completely derail your life. Now imagine a different situation. The same problems happen. Your car needs repairs. Your laptop dies. A surprise bill arrives. But instead of panic, you feel something very different. Mild annoyance. That difference might sound small, but it changes almost everything. And surprisingly, the shift doesn't require $1 million. It doesn't require 6 figures. For most people, the first real financial transformation happens at a much smaller milestone: $10,000. Saving your first $10,000 is one of the most important financial turning points you will ever experience. Not because it makes you rich, and not because it allows you to suddenly start buying luxury items, but because it changes how you think, how you make decisions, and how you approach money for the rest of your life. Most people think financial milestones are arbitrary numbers, but certain amounts of money create real psychological shifts. And $10,000 is often the first level where life starts to feel fundamentally different. To understand why, we need to look at what life is like without it. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every financial decision becomes a calculation. You're constantly asking yourself questions like, can I afford this? Will this mess up my budget? What happens if something goes wrong? Even small expenses require mental effort. Choosing between brands at the grocery store, deciding whether to eat out or cook at home, accepting an invitation from friends that might cost money. All of these tiny decisions slowly drain your mental energy. Psychologists call this decision fatigue. When your brain is constantly forced to calculate financial risk, it becomes exhausted, and that stress spills into every other part of life. Sleep gets worse. Productivity drops. Relationships become strained. Financial stress isn't just about money. It affects how your brain functions. But something interesting happens when you accumulate your first $10,000. The money itself doesn't dramatically change your lifestyle. You're not suddenly flying first class or buying expensive gadgets. But the psychological impact is huge. The first thing that changes is your relationship with risk. When you have zero savings, every decision feels dangerous. Switching jobs becomes terrifying. Taking a course to improve your skills feels risky. Even planning a vacation can feel irresponsible, because one wrong move could leave you financially exposed. But when you have $10,000 saved, those same decisions start to feel manageable. You're not reckless. You're simply less afraid. That small financial cushion gives you breathing room. And breathing room allows you to think beyond just surviving. Instead of constantly playing defense with your money, you can finally start thinking about offense. The second change is how you respond to unexpected problems. Before savings, an emergency can feel catastrophic. A car repair might mean putting the expense on a credit card. A medical bill might force you to borrow money. Even small problems can spiral into larger financial setbacks. But with $10,000 saved, most common emergencies suddenly become manageable. Car repairs, minor medical bills, unexpected travel costs, even a short period of unemployment. While the money might not cover every possible situation, it covers the majority of the problems that typically push people into debt. And that alone removes an enormous amount of stress. But perhaps the most powerful change is something less obvious: confidence. When you know you have money in the bank, you carry yourself differently. You negotiate differently. You're more willing to walk away from bad deals. You're less likely to accept poor working conditions or underpaid opportunities because desperation disappears. And desperation is often what forces people into bad financial decisions. When you remove desperation, your options expand. But there's another transformation that happens around the $10,000 milestone. You start thinking about money differently. Before savings, money feels temporary. Your paycheck arrives, and then it quickly disappears. Rent, bills, groceries, transportation. There's very little left over. Money feels like something that flows through your hands. But once you build a 5-figure savings balance, something shifts. For the first time, money starts to feel like a tool. Instead of disappearing, it begins to create options. Maybe you notice an online course that could help you improve your career. Maybe there's an opportunity to start a small side project. Maybe you consider investing for the first time. Without savings, these opportunities are almost impossible to pursue. With savings, they become realistic. And this is where the long-term impact of that first $10,000 becomes clear. Because the most important thing about saving $10,000 isn't the money itself. It's the habits you build while saving it. Think about what it actually takes to reach that milestone. You have to become more aware of your spending. You learn to distinguish between wants and needs. You develop patience. You learn how to delay gratification. And perhaps most importantly, you develop the identity of someone who saves money. This identity shift is incredibly powerful. People who see themselves as savers begin making different decisions automatically. They notice wasteful spending more easily. They search for smarter financial choices. They become intentional with their money. And once that identity is established, future progress becomes much easier. Saving your first $1,000 is often the hardest step. It requires discipline and constant effort. But saving the second $1,000 becomes slightly easier. By the time you reach $5,000, the process often feels natural. And when you finally reach $10,000, something important happens. You gain momentum. Momentum is one of the most underrated forces in personal finance. Once you prove to yourself that you can reach a financial goal, the next goal suddenly feels achievable. You start thinking about the next milestone. Maybe $20,000. Maybe $50,000. Eventually, $100,000. But none of those future milestones would exist without the first one. That initial $10,000 proves that progress is possible. There's also a practical financial advantage to reaching this level. Many of the setbacks that keep people trapped in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle come from unexpected expenses, car repairs, medical costs, emergency travel, temporary job loss. These events force people into credit card debt. And once high-interest debt enters the picture, financial progress becomes extremely difficult. But a $10,000 cushion protects you from many of these situations. Instead of borrowing money during emergencies, you can rely on your own savings. This keeps you out of debt. And avoiding debt is often just as important as building wealth, because high-interest debt can erase years of financial progress. But the benefits go beyond financial stability. People with emergency savings report better sleep, lower stress, and improved mental health. It turns out that financial security doesn't just protect your bank account. It protects your peace of mind. And that peace of mind allows you to make better long-term decisions. Instead of reacting to every financial problem, you can finally think strategically. You start optimizing your expenses. You start researching investment options. You start thinking about how to increase your income. In other words, you shift from survival mode to growth mode. Now, it's important to be realistic. Having $10,000 saved does not make you wealthy. It doesn't mean you can retire early, and it certainly doesn't mean you'll never worry about money again. But it does give you something incredibly valuable: Control. Control over your decisions. Control over your opportunities. And control over your financial future. Without savings, life constantly pushes you into reactive decisions. With savings, you begin choosing your path more deliberately. And that difference compounds over time, because the people who build their first $10,000 rarely stop there. Once you've built the habits and mindset required to reach that milestone, larger goals become much more achievable. The same discipline that created $10,000 can create $50,000 and eventually $100,000. But it all begins with that first turning point. The moment when you stop living entirely paycheck to paycheck. The moment when money stops being a constant source of fear. And the moment when your financial life begins to move forward instead of standing still. Saving your first $10,000 isn't just about building a safety net. It's about building a new relationship with money. A relationship built on control, confidence, and long-term thinking. And for many people, that small shift becomes the foundation for everything that comes next. If this video helped you see money differently, subscribe to Capital Explained. This channel is about understanding how wealth actually works beneath the surface. Thanks for watching.